Welcome back, everybody, to another day of the show. I already have the giggles for some reason. Jaden just read out to me a little conversation that was going on in the comments before we went live about the stretchiness and flexibility of time in the Luke Beasley universe, which was interesting because I'm pretty punctual in my personal life, but with the show, it's like a concert. You know how you show up to a concert, it's supposed to start at 7 p.m., but the main act doesn't come out until like 8:30 p.m. and it just builds the anticipation? That's what this is, okay? When we say we start at a certain time, that's a suggestion. That's a concept of a plan, as a sort of unwise person
I have
once
concepts of a plan.
put it. And you just have to sit in the anticipation, because then, as I was once told by a relative, the longer I wait, the longer I make you wait to eat, the yummier the meal tastes. So get ready to have a whole lot of me in your mouth. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Today on the show, we will be getting into the disaster. Sorry. Sometimes I forget that I'm not just sitting in the room with them and there's a bunch of people out there. Hi, how are you? We will be getting into the disaster that is Trump's peace deal. We've already gone through a bunch of the specifics, but more so the fact that this has caused everybody to be mad at Trump. Do you remember that clip? Actually, as a little teaser for today's show. We won't actually look at this in any of the segments, but I do think it's interesting. You know this clip where Trump, amid horrible polls in the United States, started making himself feel better by looking at polls of how popular he is or was in Israel?
He's a great guy. To me, he's a great guy. Don't forget, he was a wartime prime minister, and he's not treated right in Israel, in my opinion. I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister, so maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister.
So that by itself is quite a remarkable clip, because the U.S. president having to soothe themselves by looking at polls in a different country as opposed to the country that they're actually the president of demonstrates a state of popularity crisis that you rarely see. But because of, and this illustrates my point, because of the conclusion to this war being about as disastrous as the entry into the war, even in Israel, his support has collapsed. Wow, writes Republicans against Trump. Trump's support in Israel collapsed from plus 23 net popularity to negative 23 in just 3 weeks, according to this particular pollster. And that emphasizes that even the folks who were much more likely to be supportive of him in the country that he was feeling happy looking at polls from, because he can't be happy looking at polls from the U.S., even that support has collapsed, because wherever you came into this war, right, wherever you stood as we entered the war, there's 100 reasons, regardless of where you stood, to now be real stunned in a negative fashion by how it's concluding, even if you're happy as I am that it is closer to concluding now, and that's pretty dang remarkable. So we'll get into that. We'll get into examples of everyone PO'd at him, including the people who were rooting on Trump throughout this entire war. Then Laura Loomer posted a sort of mea culpa, saying she thinks she fell for and perpetuated Russian propaganda, which, yeah, obviously, but now she's realizing it, which is kind of fascinating. But the reason why she's realizing it, I think, isn't as moral or admirable, maybe is the correct word, as I'd like. Because Laura Loomer is one of the most toxic figures in American politics. But it's interesting to see her saying, look, I fell for Russian propaganda. I perpetuated their falsehoods. I think she's only doing that, though, because there's a person that she hates more than she hated Ukraine. And that person has become pro-Russian, so now she's flipping. But hey, as long as you have the correct take, I guess I'll give you a little applause, and we'll look at the origin of Trump's disdain for Obama and how it's coming back to haunt him. Obama's popularity is soaring in his post-presidency and is nearly the combined support of Trump and Biden. And Obama is listed among his party as the best president by a margin you wouldn't believe, even compared to Lincoln, even compared to FDR, etc. So as you can tell, a ton. That's not even all. Carrie Lake's going to make an appearance, not like in an interview, but just in a clip that I'm going to play for you. And a bad hearing she had, and we're just going to sit here for hours. I don't know how long this is going to take. It's going to be a while. So let's get into it. Yesterday, Trump signed the Iran Memorandum of Understanding. The White House posted this photo and said, "Peace through strength." Now, of course, that is not what's happening. Number one, we don't know if we'll have long-standing peace. Number two, if we do, I'll be happy. But we also should acknowledge that, of course, entering into this war set us up for a complete calamity, which we're now seeing in how horrendous for the U.S. this deal is. Still want it? Sure, let's get out of this thing. But you cannot say anything other than, wowza. For the guy who wrote Art of the Deal, or the guy who paid someone to write Art of the Deal, this is a horrible, horrible deal. And Trump's aides, Trump's staff around him know it. They know it. They're panicking over this. This is members of his administration thumbing through the peace memorandum and trying to find something that's good for the U.S.
Excuse me.
Yes, that's exactly. And if you think, hey, well, that's not literally, that was Russell Brand trying to look for a Bible verse in Isaiah, as he put it. Okay, here's a real clip of Marco Rubio as Trump talks about, you know what? Do we even need their enriched uranium? You know what? Maybe we just give them pallets and pallets of cash, even though I criticized Obama for years for that. And less. You know what? Maybe they should have a ballistic missile program. Who cares? After that being the opposite of what they said entering into this
country. So we'll be...
This is Marco Rubio's face. Just examine it. Does this look like someone who's proud and victorious?
Working on a parallel effort with the Gulf nations to address non-nuclear issues, such as the conventional ballistic missiles, which we'll be talking about. And support. I mean, they have to have some because other people have some. You got to have some. Somebody said you shouldn't give them one. I mean, I have guys. I like some of these guys, but I don't think they're smart. Sir, you shouldn't let them have any missile. I said, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to let Saudi Arabia have missiles, but they can't have them? Yes, sir. Doesn't work that way.
Now, we are still doing a forensic analysis, aside from Marco Rubio looking completely distraught and horrified by what's taking place, contrary to his public statements. We are doing a forensic analysis to determine if flatulence came out here from Trump on the microphone.
Missiles, but they can't have them? Yes, sir. Doesn't work that way, you know? It doesn't work that way. And missiles aren't the problem. Missiles are... They hurt a little location, but they don't blow up the planet.
Well, if that's the standard, so you might go, wait, what is the problem with that? Obviously, they were going to come out of this still being able to develop ballistic missiles. No, I understand. I'm just comparing it to the statements made by the Trump administration, by defenders. We're going to look at later a flashback to my bar fight debate with Michael Knowles and Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw, where they said, when I confronted them with U.S. intelligence that demonstrated there wasn't an imminent nuclear threat, they went, yeah, but there was an imminent threat potentially of them using ballistic missiles against targets that are U.S. targets in the region, right? And so they shifted the goalpost. Trump said it was all about nuclear. I say, wait, what? Here's evidence from the U.S. intelligence community saying that wasn't an imminent threat. To which Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw and Michael Knowles, who was like tiptoeing all over the fence, was like, well, no, because we probably could have determined that their missile program by itself was enough of a threat to go to war. So that has to be eliminated. Oh, wait, but now your guy who you cheered on, who you justified these actions that would go on to do the damage to the global economy and to the geopolitical safety of the United States, is now saying, yeah, we'll let them have them. Yeah, we're not going to do anything on that, but we'll give them a heck of a lot of money. And then, does this post from Trump on Truth Social read like someone who's victorious and proud and not insecure? He wrote, "These fools who think I haven't been tough enough on Iran when the stock market just hit a record high and oil prices are tumbling down are either jealous, bad people, or stupid. Make America great again, President DJT. This was at 4:30 a.m. I guess he's international, though, so that makes more sense. But someone explain the logic of that to me. People are fools for saying, I guess the wording is wrong to say not tough enough. Some people are saying that. His neocon wing is unhappy for a different reason. We're unhappy because this whole thing has been a disaster and we predicted it and now it's coming true in its conclusion. The neocons are mad because Trump is giving Iran so much and they wanted to go to war until like Iran was completely eliminated or something, or the regime at least was completely eliminated. That obviously was never realistic without a full ground invasion, which obviously Americans would not have supported. And Trump says that those criticisms are incorrect because the stock market's high. This is a follow-up to Bondi's Dow at 50,000. Similarly absurd. He also doesn't seem to realize that the stock market could keep making gains even as he impedes the economy. If I am confident, very confident in saying that if Biden or Kamala had just stayed in office, if there were just a normal president in office, the stock market would have been doing much better over these years. The fact that it still is making gains, and thus because of how sky high it was whenever Trump inherited it, it just needs to tick more and more and more to hit more quote-unquote record highs, does not mean everything he's doing economically makes sense. Of course, there's a lot more economic data metrics we can look at, which we do, that demonstrate the disaster of his policies. Here's him on video as well, confirming again this ballistic missile issue.
Can I follow up quickly on something you said at the press conference? You said you don't mind Iran having ballistic missiles. Can you elaborate on that? I want to make sure we understand your position.
No, I'm saying that if other countries have them, it's a little bit unfair for them not to have some. A ballistic missile is not the same thing as what we're talking about when we talk nuclear. But if Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and they all have some, I would say in relative proportion, I think it's okay. That's what I mean.
So it's, in a weird way, good to hear some of this, because you're saying these are the types of statements that make it feel like this isn't another false declaration of an end to the war, but actually more real. And that's good. And then to the people out there who pretend like the me's in the political pundit space, pointing out how disastrous this is, even while saying, whatever will get us to an end to this, I'm for, are somehow going to convince Trump into not pursuing a peace deal. You silly. Our job is, of course, to be truthful, not to guess. Is Trump going to stumble across a Luke Beasley video and then go, oh, no, well, this is not a bad deal. Fine, I'll go back to war until I get a better one. I'll just tell you the truth. Yay, let's get out. And I could not have written up a more horrendous peace deal for us. That's what happens whenever you don't have a plan and you go into a war. It's not going to end well. Little random miscellaneous clip from this press conference. Trump is getting worse and worse at understanding reporters who have accents.
Did you ask other G7 nations to send military force? And what specifically are you asking of Japan? Or
Where are you from?
That was a pretty easy to understand question. Asking about what military support Trump, did you ask other countries for support in the G7? And what did you specifically ask from Japan? And then Trump will have a very hard time. And as Aaron Rupar put it, Marco Rubio has to translate English to English.
I'm from Japan.
From where?
Japan. And is military support...
I just left your prime minister. Japan's doing very well. She's my biggest fan, I have to tell you. She thinks I did a great job. You have to call her and ask her. She's doing a very good job, by the way. Go ahead.
And military support is no longer necessary?
Yeah, but what do you want to know? Go ahead, just tell me. What do you want to know?
Okay, my question is, did you ask other G7 nations to send military force? And what specifically are you asking of Japan?
To send the Air Force?
Oh, no. Oh, no. That's not... I know sometimes it's hard to understand what someone's saying if they have a thick accent. I've understood every single word that guy said. And he says, send the Air Force to Japan?
For what? Oh, other countries, not just Japan. No, we don't need it.
Okay. Okay, that did not help at all. So Trump obviously is struggling to message on this, and again, understand, please, for me. In the title of today's live, you see I'm referencing that everyone's upset with Trump now, and that's a very real phenomenon that I didn't know would happen, because the people who didn't support the war in the first place are just mad at all this being a disaster and it going exactly the way that we said that it would, and that it would lead to a conclusion that would be bad for us. The people who have been rooting on this war don't feel like we got enough out of it, because we didn't. We didn't achieve the things that Trump went into it saying we were going to achieve. But we knew he wasn't going to be able to, which is why we said we should have got into it. But if you supported him going into it, it's because you thought he could achieve the things he said he was going to, and then he didn't. So now you're mad. I'm talking Lindsey Graham's uncomfortable. I'm talking Mark Levin is raging over this. And he was like, woohoo, Trump, during this whole process. And so now they're in a state of crisis. They send out J.D. Vance. Maybe he can do some damage control. Didn't work.
Can you help us understand President Trump's shift on his stance for Iran's ballistic missile program? Initially, it was a key objective to dismantle it. Yesterday, he said it would only be fair if they had some, if the countries around Iran also had some. So when and why did that change? And will the final agreement have any restrictions on these missiles?
So we destroyed a substantial number of their ballistic missiles and their ballistic missile launchers themselves. It's not just the bullets, but it's the actual gun. And that's what we were extremely effective at in destroying during the last 3 months of the campaign. All the president.
But now they have a $300 billion reconstruction fund. I'm sure they're not shedding many tears over the launchers being blown up temporarily that now they can fix.
Said yesterday is that, of course, countries don't give up the right of self-defense.
Okay, there it is. Very interesting shift there. Can everyone just remember this for a few months in the future when they say this was no longer the case when we have to go back to war with Iran?
Saying about the president's peace deal, they're saying this is an amazingly transformative thing for the region because either way, we and the broader region win. Iran is weakened, their nuclear program destroyed, their economy in desperate straits, and if they change their behavior, big things are going to happen for Iran and for the world. If they don't, no skin off our backs.
So just if you're missing, you can go find the text of the MOU yourself and go through each word. But from what we've already examined as a really simple explanation, just picture the Obama deal, but then take out some of the good stuff we got out of that deal and add way more good stuff for Iran, and add that now they have a power on the world stage to leverage the Strait of Hormuz like never before. And it appears they might, after the 60-day period, then start charging tolls. And just picture taking the Obama one, but adding a war that was really bad for us, and then take down 50% the good stuff we got out of that deal and juice up 500% the good stuff Iran gets out of the deal. Okay, that's a quick summary. Midas Touch writes, Netanyahu's reportedly trying to influence the final Iran deal by using right-wing media figures like Mark Levin and friendly Republican senators to pressure Trump. The report also says Netanyahu has told Trump that Israel does not consider itself bound by the agreement, despite its requirement for an immediate and permanent end to the war in Lebanon. Now, this should freak you out because we've seen this story before. Netanyahu, I've heard multiple analysts, experts in Israeli politics and in the region, saying that this deal, just like how we looked at in the intro, Trump's popularity in Israel going from really popular to unpopular over this deal, you're seeing the potential end to the Netanyahu political career, is what much more knowledgeable people than me about Israeli politics are saying about this. Because he does not see this coming to a conclusion as a win, right? He went into this, he's been advocating for this for decades and decades and decades. As we looked at yesterday with Hillary Clinton being like, he said the same thing to us and we just turned him down. He tried to convince us too, because we had brains and we just said, no, we don't want to do that. We'll trust our own intelligence. He didn't do all that advocacy so that Iran's regime would stay in place, be emboldened, more extreme, and then get a bunch of money to rebuild, right? He wanted this to be like the complete end of the Iranian regime forever, which pragmatically was a ludicrous goal to think that was possible, and then to pitch it as it would just take some limited strikes. But that's what he was sort of selling for years. And so I'm worried about what he will try to do to make sure this doesn't, over that 60-day period, actually come into fruition permanently. Then back to J.D. Vance.
Many of the colleagues that you served with in the U.S. Senate and Republican Conference have criticized this deal over the last 24 hours. What is your message, Mr. Vice President, back to them?
So I guess I would say to anybody, any of the critics, is number one, have a little bit of faith in the President of the United States. The idea that he is going to strike a deal that's been bad for the American people.
And we're to that part of the advocacy. You know it gets bad. Do you remember the tariff saga? He comes into office. They're trying to make a case for it. He does the tariffs. Everything reacts poorly economically. So then it goes from here's why it'll work to, you know what? Just trust Trump. Once you can't argue with specific points and good arguments, and you just have to rely on, I don't know, trust us, you know, things have gotten really, really bad. And finally, if you trust Vance right now, see if you trust him after this clip.
And it's interesting that so many people, like, you know, if you give Donald Trump an IQ test with the other 45, 46 presidents that the United States has had, I guarantee he'd be either near the top or at the top.
A brain, 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 a brain.
Vance says he might be the highest IQ president we've ever had. JD. Got it out. Quick check-in with the audience. Jay Callens became a member by clicking the join button. You now get access to the evening live bonus show just for members at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. A Bear in the Woods said, yay, live show. Got my whole family gathered around like it's FDR's fireside chat in here. Love to hear it. That's awesome. Marco, member for 8 months, did a dolphin emoji and then a pride flag emoji and said, and Kayla, is guitar practicing allowed during bonus show call-ins if they're open again on Friday, plus asking a question, and then pride flag dolphin emojis. I would say playing the guitar is I'm gonna have to say not the purpose of the call-ins, but if you want to send us a recording, you're proud of something, to the contact@lukebeasleyshow.com, we'll give it a listen. Give it a listen. Or you want to send a DVD to our P.O. Box. Jaden wanted me to plug this today. Jaden can pull up our P.O. Box address if y'all want to send things. Keep it regular, as I have to specify. Keep it normal. No anthrax, obviously. And if you want to send a CD, get old-fashioned, then that's good with us as well. But we'll keep the call-ins for questions verbally. Erica Browning, member for 2 months, said, happy Pride. Marco looks like a kid that was forced by his dad to stand on that stage with him, and Marco is like, this is so embarrassing. True. Jiggle Jess said, what's your skincare routine, big dog? Your shit always glowing. I need some of them creams and ointments. Good show, thanks, as always. You know what's wild? I really appreciate that. First of all, the lights we have and the powder I put on to make sure I'm not too reflective because of how bright the lights are do wonders. So don't compare your skin under normal lighting to this. Just I want to make sure that's specified. But I do appreciate the compliment. I do like to think I have good skin. And all I do, maybe I'm just lucky on the genetic front or something, but all I do is wash my face with a face wash and then moisturize my face. And then try to wear sunscreen when I'm in the sun. That's it. So, nothing magical. But my boyfriend has a much more advanced skincare routine, so maybe I'll ask him and give you a better answer. We now get to the portion of the show where we hear from some of the pro-war voices who have been rooting Trump on every step of the way, even as some of the most prominent former Trump supporters in the media, like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and others, have broken away from him over this war. There have been some famous right-wingers still rooting him on, right? Ben Shapiro, you're seeing on screen, is one of them. Lindsey Graham is another. Mark Levin. And the fact that even they, Batya's also turning. Is that crazy? We never thought we'd lose Batya. The fact that even they are going, oh my gosh, this is not a good ending to the war. This feels like a surrender, what we're giving over to Iran. Which, because this is going to be a standalone video when we publish it on YouTube, let me say again, I know our full show audience has heard this too many times, get a little bit of redundant, but I should say for everybody, I want this war to come to an end, so if this is the deal that gets it over, okay. That doesn't mean we have to pretend like it's good. It's obviously tragic, and we never should have left Obama's deal. Trump should just negotiate an extension to Obama's deal. That's obvious, but to see the people who have been the last remaining prominent MAGA voices cheering Trump on throughout this war, turning on him over the conclusion to it, over the disaster that is the quote-unquote peace deal, as of now just a memorandum of understanding and then a 60-day further negotiating period, is pretty remarkable, I would say. So let's start with Ben Shapiro.
Say there, Ben.
Well, I've said many times, the president deciding to go into Iran and to hit nuclear facilities in Operation Midnight Hammer, and then to go after Iran's ballistic missile facilities, nuclear facilities, Army, Navy, and Air Force in this current operation was the signal act of political bravery, perhaps, of my lifetime. With that said, this MOU appears to be, just from the text, a disaster that does not achieve any of the actual signal goals that were set by the administration at the beginning. There were effectively 5 goals that were set by the administration at the beginning. One was ending the nuclear program, not just nuclear weapons, no nuclear enrichment, zero enrichment. That is not in the deal. Ballistic missiles ended. That is not in the deal, and the president today suggested that ballistic missiles should actually continue to be held by the Iranians because the Saudis, our allies, also hold ballistic missiles. Then you have the support of terrorism. That is not part of the deal. Anything that looks like an attempt to end terrorism. A permanent opening of the Strait of Hormuz toll-free. Not only is that not in the deal appears to have a provision allowing Iran and Oman to attempt to toll the strait after 60 days. And then finally, the idea that Iran would receive some sort of sanctions relief after all of those things happen. We are already seeing from day one relief in their ability to ship oil out of Iran. In my opinion, the Vice President of the United States, the chief negotiator on this particular project, has not well served the president.
That last part makes your ear go, What's being set up there? It's so irritating. These Trump cheerleaders always have an out. Imagine making one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in American history. Imagine that for a second. And then imagine you are the person who supports that person. The previous you in my explanation of what I'm saying is getting very muddled and confusing. Imagine you're supporting the person who made one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in history. Okay. And then you're trying to figure out, I've made my whole brand being aligned with this guy. So what do I do now? Do I admit that I was wrong? No. For some reason, media personalities, in particular political pundits, seem allergic to ever just saying, I was wrong and Luke Beasley was correct. Why won't people do that more often? It'd make their life so much better. And so instead of saying, you know what, I'm starting to see that even if pro-war Trump, who entered the war just like I wanted him to, is exiting it in a disastrous and humiliating way, maybe that proves me wrong. Maybe that means I was wrong in my analysis. No. Instead, it's they could have kept fighting for a better deal, but I think Vance has messed this up. And that's the second fold to this that bothers me. Number one, protect your own ability to say that you still could have been correct in your original analysis. Number two, try not to make it seem like it's fully Trump's fault. We heard a lot of this from the critics of the war, but who kind of still wanted to stay sort of MAGA friendly, where they were like, oh, he must have just gotten tricked into it. Oh no, he couldn't help himself. And then you're hearing it there from Ben Shapiro. I think Vance has really messed this up. Oh, it's Vance's fault. Now, I want Vance to also be held responsible, but Trump, at the end of the day, is the guy. He's the president. And you're not going to get away with, as Trump seems to be setting up as well, just going, hey, it was under Vance's umbrella of responsibility, so it's not my fault. Now, Batya Ungar-Sargon is one of the most vocal supporters of Trump. And look at what she's saying now.
You wrote, the greatest superpower to ever exist, brought to its knees by a few minds, just a disaster for America. Expand on that. Why?
Thank you so much for having me, John. It's always great to be with you. Look, it gives me obviously no pleasure to say this, but I think this deal is a total disaster. I agree with a lot of the people you've been quoting at the top of the show and also last hour. Iran has come out of this stronger than it was before.
If you don't know Batya, you might not know how wild it is to hear this. We have played clips of her that give me so much secondhand embarrassment because she'll bend herself into the most complex pretzel you've ever seen in your life to defend Trump, and even she is not here. That is remarkable.
It's getting $300 billion in sanctions relief. It also, in the MOU, it states that it commits not to charge tolls through the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days, John, meaning it has suddenly occurred to them that they can start doing that. They realized that it didn't matter that we had complete military superiority and total military victory over them. If they could plant a few mines in that strait, they could bring the greatest superpower to ever exist in human history to its knees. And that is just such a disaster. I mean, what message do you think that signals to China right now? It's really, really horrifying. And I'm very...
So, I think you're getting the gist, which is that it's not just me. Maybe you could have guessed that given my stance on this more broadly, I was going to be horrified by the reporting about the deal here. But to see it from those two... I'm about to show you Lindsey Graham trying to stay supportive, but it's weak, is proof that it's not just some liberal talking point. So let's look at Lindsey Graham. He hasn't gone to that extent because he's very petrified of Trump and doesn't ever want to criticize him. But Lindsey Graham has had the most pleasure in his life ever watching this war unfold. He's been so happy with it, so excited. And watch now as he's trying to stay positive.
Off on whatever that reason. I mean, well, under the law, any nuclear deal with Iran has to come to Congress for disapproval. That's what we did under Obama. And President Trump said today he will send it to Congress. He welcomes a vote. Here's what we achieved. If this thing goes through Friday, we've opened up the straits, which will help the economy of the world. The world will be in a permanent ceasefire, hopefully. And we'll try to get a nuclear deal with Iran, and hopefully that will work out. If it doesn't, then we still have achieved opening up the straits and, stopping the fighting.
Guys, did you hear that? It was kind of muddled, so I'll tell you what he said if you didn't. He has gone from, this is gonna make you Reagan plus, to Trump, right? You remember that clip? And Trump was like, yeah, whatever, Lindsey. This is going to be historic. You're going to eliminate their nuclear ambitions forever. You're going to do a regime change. This is amazing. It's like fighting the Nazis, and we're going to have a similarly amazing victory. To now, because he's petrified, he can't say what Batya or Ben said, but to now being reduced to listing as the accomplishments, take it down. Let's go. Ready? That the straits... Don't know why everyone says that. It's one strait. One of them. There's one strait of Hormuz. Will be open. And there will be a permanent ceasefire. The fighting will stop. And then, quote, we'll try to get a nuclear deal with Iran. If that doesn't work, at least we've opened the straits and stopped the fighting. Lindsey has gone from this will be the greatest victory against an adversary that will lead to a pro-American Iranian regime with no nuclear ambitions that will never target through their proxies or any other way any of our allies or American forces, to the accomplishment will be maybe just the Strait of Hormuz is open and the fighting stops. which is exactly where we were before we started the war. We talked about was this the bonus show, Mark Levin, just posting, I mean, look at this. This is like a Trump True Social post. Just pages and pages of criticisms on Twitter of the MOU. Oh my gosh. That's the... A lot of criticism from Levin, who's been very excited about this up until this point. And then he, of course, Piers Morgan now has long been critical of this after cheering on Trump in the 2024 election. But he also did a segment, I don't need to play it, but saying, yikes, yikes, yikes. That's the resounding takeaway from liberals, from conservatives, from pro-war conservatives, from anti-war conservatives, etc. Hey, Jared Frank, you think I didn't saw it? I saw it. I saw it, Jared. I'm not reading it, but I saw it. Okay? That's just where I'll leave it. And then you have Candace Rose, who's been a member for a month, saying, is it correct to see this failure in Iran as a complete undermining of our military power? I'm afraid it's empowering our adversaries to attack us. You're not wrong to see this as something that will embolden our adversaries. For us to come out of a war with Iran, and the perception from even the people who rooted on the war being, I think we lost, this is a defeat, definitely takes us down multiple notches in the perception of our power. Does that mean our actual military strength should be called into question? No. I have deep reverence for the totality of the might of the U.S. military. But what Trump was trying to do here was get the benefits of a military operation without the political backlash of a full-scale military operation, full-scale war, boots on the ground, etc. So if we had an actual existential fight, something like World War II, and the American people were on board with us using any and every possible option on the table, I think our military is still the most powerful military in the world and could do whatever we put our mind to. But that's not what this was. And Trump knew that. And so that limited his decision-making, and then his decision-making was horrendous. And I think that's more to blame as opposed to like, our military isn't strong. I don't think that's the takeaway. Jennifer Woods, thank you for the super chat. And then you also said, can your sweet Michael come on the show and show the skincare routine? Maybe so. Maybe we'll do that on a bonus show. Click the join button on YouTube. Mary said, I was right too. I agreed with everything you said. I know it's one of those you hate to be right in this situation. Divide just watched the bonus show, who's been a member for 5 months, said, happy Pride Month for no reason at all. Sorry everyone keeps calling you NT. Newsgay just doesn't roll off the tongue the same. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. One of the more bizarre phenomena throughout the Biden administration was watching right-wing media figures in particular, Tucker Carlson most famously, start lusting after the Russian regime and Putin. And it never made sense to me. There wasn't like a historical affinity for the Russian government or its authoritarian regime within the Republican Party, but it just popped up. And the simplest explanation, while there's multiple, and I'll go through a few of them, but then I want to get into today's story, is MAGA had an automatic response to anything Biden said or did, which was to take the opposite position. And because Russia invaded Ukraine unjustly, offensively, in a murderous invasion, Biden took a very pro-Ukraine stance. So then MAGA, who was just obsessed with saying whatever Biden does is wrong, started trying to find reasons to believe that Biden's support for Ukraine must be irrational because they can't even root on that. They can't even root on the U.S. president standing by an ally who's being unjustly invaded and their sovereignty is being violated. So they started making excuses for Russia so that they could say Biden's being corrupt, or it's his fault that the war started and you know, he provoked Putin, or now he's sending money corruptly to Ukraine because they wanted everything Biden wanted to do was bad. But the other thing is there is a right-wing, performatively, traditionally Christian ideology that the Russian government tries to project, which is fraudulent, which is blasphemous, to cite Christian beliefs while your government is most notably slaughtering a bunch of women and children and invading a whole country of, by the way, majority Christians. But that's the other thing, is they got convinced into like, this is where they don't stand for woke in Putin's Russia. It's like, what? That's the thing you're thinking about? And so, as all of you know, I went to Ukraine. I have a lot of personal connection now to the slaughter that's going on there, and in Ukraine's ability to defend against Russia's invasion, and just the bravery and courage of the Ukrainian people who were told, if Russia invades, your country's gonna fall in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks, in a few days. And the Russian military got really, really close to the capital city, Kyiv, and then now we're years and years later, and Ukraine is still standing up for itself and still stopping Russia from destroying their civilization. So, with all that being said, one of the examples of a right-wing media figure who espoused disgusting lies about Ukraine and about the conflict was Laura Loomer. She says disgusting stuff about almost everything. She's one of the worst media figures in the right wing and is one of the most loyal people to Trump. So when Trump started playing, footsie with Putin, she started saying, oh, I should too. It is interesting, though, you can leave this up, Jaden, but she posted this: I think I fell for Russian propaganda. Let me explain. And I said, oh my gosh, rarely do people admit when they fell for propaganda from a foreign government or from a current American leader. And while she doesn't connect it to Trump at all, she does say she fell for Russian propaganda. I'll play the clip for you, but there's an interesting ending to this story, because while I'm happy to see anyone who had a radically wrong foreign policy take to admit they were wrong, I actually think she's only admitting this because of a petty beef she has with a different right-wing media figure who's becoming really pro-Russian. So, hey, good. Admit that you fell for the propaganda. A lot of you did. But are you doing this because you actually care about the horrendous things the Russian military has been doing under the direction of Putin, or because you want to get at your biggest nemesis?
Deplatformed, and when my election.
Let me start this over.
When I was deplatformed and when my election was rigged because the big tech social media companies wouldn't allow me to have access to social media, RT started reaching out to me and asking me to come on their show. And
that's Russian state TV.
Said, why don't you have a byline on RT? And you can even write for RT. I never took any money from RT. I was never paid. But I felt, wow, how crazy is it that my own government won't allow me to, they're not fighting for me when the big tech social media companies are deplatforming my campaign and they're not allowing me to have a voice, but RT will let me talk about these issues, right? And then you start to get kind of goaded into saying things like, oh, well, maybe they care more about free speech than my own country. Or, wow, Putin made a comment about how they stole the election with mail-in ballot fraud. And so you make comments that are pro-Putin. And I made a lot of those comments. I said, wow, Yes,
Putin saying that American elections are being stolen while he actively steals his own elections is definitely something you should take seriously.
He's 100% right about needing to denazify Ukraine. And I recognize that I said, wow, he's openly criticizing the big tech social media companies for rigging the election against Donald Trump. And while I'm glad that he said those things, part of me wonders, did he actually mean it? Or is this part of the psychological operation to try to co-opt the right after 10 years of being told that there was Russia collusion and, a Russian interference scandal in our elections? And then we all got Russia fatigue and we started to get really sick and tired of people who would constantly attack Russia for everything. And a lot of us just became overly sympathetic to Russia, and we put the blinders on because we just thought that, oh my God, anytime anybody mentions Russia, well, this means that, they're trying to spew propaganda against Donald Trump and the conservative movement, and they're calling us Russian bots. They called us all Russian bots.
So it's good to hear that. And that's the part I missed. Now I'm being reminded as she's saying that. That's the other fold, which is MAGA was permanently traumatized for some reason by all of the investigations, rightfully so, into the Russian government's attempts to influence the 2016 election, which were real. Don't forget that happened. When they say it was all a hoax, they mean because it wasn't demonstrated that Trump himself was coordinating directly, actively with the Russian government during his campaign, that it all was a lie. That's not the takeaway. Correct. Trump was not caught like calling Putin saying, come on. I mean, he did publicly say, go get the information, but he didn't secretly behind the scenes coordinate with them. Fine. So the collusion, you're saying, but oh my gosh, did he obstruct those investigations? Yeah. Did the Russian government try to get him elected? Yeah. And does that mean that he's not a legitimate president? No. But that happened. And so what she's saying is that maybe another reason why MAGA became all weirdly pro-Putin is because of the reasons I listed. And then they were told over and over that Trump's support was astroturfed by Russia. So then they, because for some reason they couldn't do nuance, took that to mean that like they should be defensive of Russia because they felt lied about. So they connected that to the Russian government was also being lied about. So we must be allies, the enemy of my enemy sort of thinking. Which again, if that's the simplicity of your political analysis and you stumble into defending a murderous regime, maybe you shouldn't speak publicly about politics, but I do understand the thread of how that happened, I guess.
And I remember even confronting Jack Dorsey during the Twitter hearing, and I said, we are not Russian bots. We are conservative Americans. And you started to sympathize with the Russians because they would call people like me a Russian bot. They would say that we were not real people. We were part of a Russian bot campaign to support Donald Trump's 2016 campaign against Hillary Clinton. But now when I see them say things like we need to denazify Ukraine and we need to continue our brutal war with Ukraine while they pretend to be, some Orthodox Christian country, but they're slaughtering thousands, like hundreds of thousands of young Christians in Ukraine. And then they're supporting actual neo-Nazis in the United States of America by clipping their podcasts. I'm like, wow, we fell for Russian propaganda. And
So with someone like Laura Loomer, it's hard for me to even think of saying the words like, credit to ya, because everything about her political project I have disdain for. The way that she just espouses horrific rhetoric to defend Trump and then to be bigoted against about anyone she can possibly be against. And so I don't know what's going on there. Before I show you another clip of her having this mea culpa, this is what I think it's really about. She has a huge beef. Like Candace Owens and Laura Loomer are arch nemesis. Yeah? And they are majorly in a beef. Candace Owens, Laura Loomer. And Laura Loomer's kind of been going to war with anyone who was questioning Trump's entry into the Iran war and then other larger rage towards, Candace Owens in particular. Candace recently went to Russia and did one of these Tucker Carlson style puff pieces about how no one told me how nice it is here. You're like, do you want to mention the war that they're in right now and how they're offensively murdering a bunch of people? I thought you cared about innocent civilians being killed. And she's like, shh, no, but like Putin's smart. Gross. I already talked about this, and it's just horrible to see people run these sorts of propaganda campaigns. But I think this is more why Laura Loomer had a come to Jesus moment about Russia, is she just wants to take the opposite position as Candace. Like, she got into falling for Russian propaganda because she wanted to take the opposite position as Biden. Now she's getting out of Russian propaganda because she wants to take the opposite position as Candace. How about you have your own position sometimes based on an actual deep understanding of geopolitics?
For example,
this is a clip of Candace in Russia.
President Putin has these news conferences where he invites CNN and the BBC and everybody, and they all pepper him with questions and they lambast him, and he sits there and takes the questions. Why don't we play that in the United States just to hear his point of view, even if we hate him and disagree with him?
Yes, I actually had watched one of those years ago, and he was able to articulate rationally what was happening in Russia. And I knew that they would never, ever, ever allow it to play in America because they have to be able to create a caricature of everyone, myself included, right? So he's supposed to be unstable, I guess, unintelligent, angry, and wanting to take over the West. And that immediately, if you inject any fresh air or you allow people to go direct and answer questions, it diminishes a caricature. It's why I'm able to effectively diminish all the lies that are told about me, because I have a platform and I'm speaking to people directly and I can show them, here's what we were doing, here's why we were doing it. I'm the one who told my audience that I was going to Russia. So if I'm an agent, a secret agent...
So a lot of people, even among liberal audiences, have Candace fever. And I get that she's an effective communicator, except for the caricature, but in general, an effective communicator. And what did she say? Moscow? But whatever. Definitely an effective communicator. She has charisma. She is former right-wing, now turned Trump critic, and people get real hyped about that. And I'm happy to see figures like her going scorched earth on Trump. But this is what I've been warning you of. Just because they say some correct things, they've spent a decade being dishonest to us. Like a decade or more in Tucker Carlson's case. Don't just stumble into going, oh my gosh, but they said something I like now and I love them. Because now she's going and defending a murderous regime. What? I thought you were against the murderous regime. And so, why? I have no clue. I don't know. She's like, I was just here for vacation. We just wanted to see Moscow. It's like, oh, okay. But then now you're doing interviews on RT talking about how the American government hides from us the truth about Putin. They want us to believe he's unintelligent. Really? Whoever says that? Whoever says Putin's unintelligent? No, he's a lunatic. Who's smart? And then she's like, oh, they just want us to believe like he wants to take over the West. Well, he's taken over countries to his west like he's doing right now. Do I think Russia has a plan to take over the United States? No. But is he currently trying to take over a country to his west? Yes. So I don't even know what to make of that. So just factually incorrect. And it's the same playbook, too. They always go there and then don't engage. Like, by the way, Candace, Tucker, anyone wants to talk about this with me? Let's chat. Let's chat about it. But let's talk about the issue at hand here. No one says that they have a problem with Putin because, like, Moscow is ugly. But then they'll go there and be like, everyone was trying to hide that Moscow is beautiful. What? That's not our problem with Putin. And then they say, oh, they would never let us play these videos of Putin talking for long periods of time about things, and he's so smart about it. Google Putin interview. It's very available in the United States. You know how I know that? Because I actually tried to study this issue before blabbering about it. That's why I'm so passionate about it. Not because I just bounced around a bunch of vibes or Twitter headlines, but because I actually tried to dive into the issue and understand it, and then literally went to the front lines in Ukraine to understand it even more. While you sat in your cushy studio and made excuses for a mass murder. I went to a pizza restaurant where I think a 15 or 14-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her was serving us. Months later, that pizza restaurant was blown up. I drove into a gorgeous city, Kyiv, as drones and missiles rained down and killed a bunch of civilians, and watched as dead bodies were dragged out because Putin can't stand that Ukraine is not his country. And so instead of just targeting military targets, he's trying to just beat the Ukrainian people into submission so they'll accept his rule. And then do you know what happens whenever he takes control of territory? Mass killings and torturings of Ukrainians because the Russian military is disgusted by their very existence. And you want to go talk about how they don't let me watch Putin interviews. Maybe you just never watched them. That's your fault. I've watched hours and hours of him talking about this subject, and never did he make a compelling argument. Not once. Do you remember whenever Tucker did that interview? And Tucker tried to get him to say it was because of NATO expansion. You remember he was like, yeah, but you probably just invaded Ukraine because like Biden was getting... You were probably scared Biden wasn't going to invade Russia. And Putin was like, shut up. And then goes on a 2-hour history lesson that doesn't justify invading a sovereign country at all. So just speaking out of the bum. So, connecting this back to Laura Loomer, it's interesting that I do think that's the reason she's now pro-Ukraine. Which, hey, now she's pro-Ukraine, okay. She's wrong on about every other issue. But is it really because she cares? No, it's because she just wants to take the opposite position of Candace on anything.
Say enough how much I'm basically now a Russia stan. So we have my babushka over there. Like I am just, or actually someone told me that's a matryoshka, right? The doll. I love what Russia has done.
Okay. All right. So I just want y'all to know that. And meanwhile, many of the people, I don't know if Candace said this specifically, but probably, definitely Tucker, who said, oh, if Russia invades, it's over. It's over on a week, too. That's it. And, of course, Tucker famously said, why should I root for Ukraine against Russia? Why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am, by the way? You remember that? Well, Ukraine's still fighting and devastating the Russian military. Zelensky wrote last night, our long-range sanctions once again reached the Moscow region. For the second time this week, the Moscow oil refinery was hit. And this was a massive strike on oil refineries. And this is a very effective way to get at what is funding their war. Even an authoritarian government like Russia still has to deal with economic concerns, the economics of war. And the more strikes they do that cripple the energy industry that fuels financially the war, the closer to peace we will get. A screenshot of a just comment, it wasn't a super chat, made me giggle. So if I giggled at a random part during that very serious segment, know that it wasn't about the segment, it was about this comment. Eric Taco Hurtado said, I love how openly gay Jaden is. In case y'all aren't aware, Jaden's in a very long-term relationship with a woman and is very much straight, but fun.
Fake news.
Germs Rosalino, member for 4 months, said, as a U.S. Army combat veteran, I'm genuinely ashamed of everything related to this Iran conflict, illegal war. Genuinely shameful. Absolutely. All right, another one. We'll just keep going through segments because we can. Republican Senator Ron Johnson has never been accused, not even once, of being the smartest. But here he really demonstrates his credibility as potentially the dumbest, with a B. And he talks about vaccines. Now, I speak about politics, right, for a living. And it's fascinating how many things I choose not to speak about because it's subjects that I don't think I have a deep enough understanding of. And then when I do, sometimes I'll try to cite sources or individuals who have a long track record of accuracy and knowledge on the subject at hand. And as someone who experiences that day to day, picking which things I think I know enough about to talk about versus the ones I don't, versus the ones I need to cite more expertise on, it always wows me how very powerful people like a U.S. senator, especially in the Republican Party, or RFK Jr., how confident they are to come out and just blabber about very consequential subjects that they obviously know very little about. Like, it's weird how they have that confidence, because I get so insecure when I even think I'm 1% not knowledgeable enough on something. I get insecure. But they don't. They're like, woo, the less I know, the better. The more fun this is going to be. Shooting from the hip. And so here is Ron Johnson talking about SIDS, which is the sudden infant death syndrome. Essentially, from my understanding, again, not an expert, sometimes infants just suddenly die. And it's very tragic, and you don't really know why. And that's what SSED is. And Ron Johnson tries to baselessly attach that to vaccines. And listen to him have, on a live interview, a brain short circuit so distinct that even he has to go, you know what? Don't quote me on any of what I just said. Watch.
A shot that they got in their arm. How did we get to a point where medicine is willing to play a game of Russian roulette with all of our healths?
Russian roulette! That's not what the phrase is.
Willing to play a game of Russian roulette with all of our healths.
Well, how we get out of it is we need to return integrity to science, and right now science does not have integrity. We held a hearing on the corruption of scientific publication and research. You've got people attacking anybody who is going to publish a study contrary to the narrative or contrary to the product they might have. So peer review is a joke. Publications like PubPeer, the people call it Pub Smear. We're seeing it time and time again of valid scientific research that's been just pulled, either retracted or removed. Even worse, looking right now into a study that was removed linking SIDS potentially to vaccines. And it's just
okay. So he makes a big claim there, right? You're about to get to the part where his brain just goes, "Hey, Ron, I'm going to sleep," boom, and then he's flying blind for like a solid 30 seconds. Okay, get ready for that. But that's a big claim. You got to be ready to defend that. If I made a claim about something like the sudden death of infants and what could be causing it, oh my gosh, I would have notes in front of me. I would have studies ready to go. I would know to the decimal what the stats were on it. Otherwise, I will look like a fool, and that will be ridiculous. And as a U.S. Senator, I could be stoking concerns about life-saving things that I don't know about, and that could lead to people dying.
Very simple analysis, looking at VAERS.
Okay, oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, watch. Very simple analysis, he says. SIDS linked to vaccines, he claims, and it's a simple analysis. Let's listen to his simple explanation.
Potentially to vaccines. And it's just a very simple analysis, looking at VAERS and saying that about 78% of the SIDS deaths reported on VAERS since the start of VAERS, and 2,600 VAERS deaths, or child deaths, 78% occurred within, I think, 3 weeks. 58% within 3 days. I mean, I shouldn't even be crying the stats because I just read it, but there's a strong correlation there, and that study got removed. So don't quote me on the stats because I just literally read them about a half hour ago, so I haven't memorized them properly, but.
He goes 78% and with children within 3 weeks, or don't quote me on that. Oh, we won't. We weren't planning on it, Ron. Thank you, sir. So no, he is wildly incorrect. The full span of data on this, once again to repeat, with very good studies and research, demonstrates no linkage between the two. What he's referencing is the least verifiable way to try to point to correlation, which even if you had a strong correlation, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean causation, but even the correlation point is like a child could figure out, one of those children who had a vaccine injury could figure out why it's bogus from the numbers he threw out there. You're saying that a death syndrome that impacts infants in the first couple months of life, in the same first couple of months of life when they get the first round of vaccinations, that if they die in the first few months of life, that will be close to when they got a vaccine? Yes. That's kind of obvious. If there's a really short span of time, which is when SIDS can happen at the beginning of a baby's life, you could also say it's linked to the mother breastfeeding, or the mother and father getting annoyed at each other because the baby's always crying, or the exiting of the vagina. Like, it could be anything that happens in that first few months. And he's just throwing it out there. You know, people have said that a baby will get a vaccine in the first few months, and then the thing that happens to babies in the first few months, sometimes when it happened close to whenever they got a vaccine. That's very similar to me getting a vaccine, walking out of the doctor's office, and then stubbing my toe, and then being like, Just the weakest correlation you can point to, and that's why you need methodologically more sound research to demonstrate if it's actually causal, which it's not, which is what the research has concluded. And that's just basic. That's basic stuff. And then he tries to make a reference to cover-ups, right? Covering up research. They're hiding. They say this whenever something gets exposed as bogus. Like, you can dive into the research and go, wait, the methodology they used here was absolutely not up to the scientific standard we should have. So then you'll have a study revoked or something, taken off wherever it was published, and they'll be like, someone's covering it up, even if you can look at exactly why it was deemed to be bogus. So that's not legitimate, but I can think of a very recent example of studies being covered up. Oh, I can think of one of those. It's your buddy RFK Jr., Ron. You remember this? RFK Jr.'s FDA blocking publication of valid research finding COVID and shingle vaccines were safe? You remember that, Ron? Are you talking about that cover-up? And this is what they never get. They love perpetuating cover-ups about how, the truth about vaccines or about this scientific issue or that one or COVID. It's all, they're hiding it, but now they own the government. They're in the government. They're running the government. And they don't apply the same standard of conspiratorial thinking or outrage thinking whenever literally the HHS secretary is hiding research commissioned by his institution because the conclusion contradicted his own feelings. The conclusion of this research was once again substantiating the safety and efficacy of COVID and shingles vaccines. And so what did RFK Jr. do? Change his stance or input that information into his analysis? No. Hide it. Remove it. Delete it. Y'all remember this from yesterday's bonus show? This is about as logical as RFK Jr. can get, justifying his decision to cover up that research.
I had an uncle.
I gotta turn that down even more. How's it coming through levels over here? I don't want to break people's ears.
An uncle, my mother's brother, who gave us very extravagant Christmas presents every year, and he gave us a pony one year, and he gave us a miniature horse.
What is it with this family and animals? I do not understand.
Dog. And one year at Thanksgiving, we asked him, we were all very excited to find out what he was going to give us.
What patriot went and broke his audio like this? It just makes it so much more unhinged. One thing, if I ever was going hiking in the woods and I knew there were a lot of like wild animals that would kill you, one thing I'll say is RFK Jr. is who
McDonald's cheeseburger.
How'd you do that?
I started doing it when I went to the top of my class.
Oh, stop. Oh my gosh. I don't know how you did that. I would want him to go be on the hike with me, you know? Because he could you get a little speaker and a mic, and then if a bear comes up, he's just like, and then they would run away. That's crazy you can do that with the soundbite. My ear's done, though.
And he said, I'm going to give you an Easter seal. And that was a great disappointment, because although we love the Easter seals, it wasn't commensurate with the level of the stuff that he usually gave us.
Yeah, maybe that'll fix it. He adjusts the mic. Maybe that'll help.
Love the Easter seals. It wasn't commensurate with the level of the stuff that he usually gave us. On Christmas Day, a flatbed truck pulled into our driveway, and there was a crate on it with a baby seal. And it was a California sea lion who lived in our pool for the next 5 years. And 5 years later, I ate it.
That's the bonus show. Make sure to click the join button to get it every day. Just a little sneak peek. But you trust that guy. Trust that guy. I had a seal living in my pool for 5 years and then I ate it. I added that part.
I just said snort cocaine off of toilet seats.
Over the research itself. Okay, Ron. No. Oh, I got so scared that the next segment was not loading. This is going to be good. Let me quickly check in with the audience, though. What am I thinking? What am I going to leave you high and dry? Bilbo Jenkins said, Lukey, I mailed you a gift yesterday. Hope it's not too girthy. Stay cute and stuff. Thank you so much. I always imagine someone just walking around YouTube, the world of YouTube, and they're thinking, oh, I've heard of Luke Beasley, you know, maybe another one of those political commentators. And then they click on a video, and then they hear me interacting with the audience, and they're like, what is the sexual undertone to all of this? Why is there such a flirty vibe to all of these conversations? I don't know. I don't know how it got here. Keaton Wilkins said, pisses me off as someone who has had to nauseatingly read and write so many scientific papers. These people who don't probably... Let me read that again because you're criticizing other people's reading. I need to nail that. Pisses me off as someone who has had to nauseatingly read and write so many scientific papers. These people who probably only read the synopsis and don't read the whole text or look at the biases. Exactly. Thank you, Keaton. Intuition Jen sent 5 gifted memberships. You are amazing as always. And then one other little thank you to MC Trey ATL, I'm assuming Atlanta, for becoming a member by clicking the join button on YouTube. I appreciate it greatly. Let's get into this. One thing that bothers me about doing debates that have a predictive element to them, meaning some of what we're debating is how something will go. And if I'm on the side of, I think this is going to go badly, and the other person, because they're trying to defend their dear leader, is like, no, everything he does is great. It's going to be perfect. One thing we don't do enough in this space of like online political media and debates is circle back and say, hey, now the thing has happened. Let's review what you was saying versus what I was saying, okay? Because it's annoying you don't get to hold anyone accountable. You might remember a few months ago, right as the Iran war was starting, I did a debate with Michael Knowles. Put that photo up. With Michael Knowles and with Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw in an event that the Daily Wire does called Bar Fight. And not only did I debate them, but then a bunch of Trump supporters were in the crowd and they were shouting at me and heckling me, and then they went up to the mic and were like, you suck. And now we have had a chance to see this play out. And almost everyone is saying, even if they previously supported us getting into the war, now the conclusion of it is demonstrating how disastrous this was. I, as we were getting into it, was saying this is going to be disastrous and here's how. And this is a betrayal of Trump's promises to his voters, etc. So I think today we should review those clips and see how they've aged. Fair? Let's start with my opening statement.
Agrees with it. President Trump's strike on Iran is a betrayal of America first.
Yeah.
You agree?
100%. And everyone in this audience knows that. Trump ran explicitly on getting us out of these exact type of regime change wars. He flipped around for some reason. He's literally doing the model that all of the people who supported him said was the opposite of what he was going to do. And this is not surprising. He's done, I know Dan supports Trump a lot, you do too. Yikes, given his record. He's failed over and over on his own campaign promises. I didn't like what he ran on, so it's not surprising that I don't like what he's doing. But anyone in this audience or the two next to me, the fact that you still support him after he's lied about his affordability agenda, he literally said specifically, by the way, I'll loop this back, but that energy prices would be cut in half in his first year. It's been a year. That didn't happen. Household electricity bills have been increasing significantly. Health insurance premiums skyrocketing. You voted for a bill that Trump introduced.
I thought we were talking about Iran.
Hold on. They gutted social programs to funnel money to the wealthy. The point in illustrating that is to explain
forgot how much I was touching Dan. A little apology. You should apologize to me for being so wrong on everything that you argued here. I should apologize to you because I was a little bit too handsy.
Health insurance premiums skyrocketing. You voted for a bill that Trump introduced. That
I thought we were talking about Iran.
Hold on. They gutted social programs to funnel money to the wealthy. The point in illustrating that is to explain it's obvious that the character of this man would be that of someone who would violate his own campaign promises on Iran and anything else. And a regime change war in Iran that he can't even exactly articulate what it's for is the epitome of a contradiction from his promises.
All right, Dan,
So that was me trying to make sure it's not just a one-issue conversation. He is not just violating, or wasn't just violating by entering the Iran war, his foreign policy promises on the campaign trail, but this is in line with him betraying so many of his campaign promises. Now, the next clip is fascinating because we just heard, I should probably show the clip. Could you take that out? We just heard from Trump that, you know what? Iran should keep their ballistic missiles. Which, okay, let's get out of this thing. But it was the defenders that you're about to see a few months ago trying to contort themselves to say this is a rational war by going, okay, maybe you're right on the nuclear program not being an imminent threat, but their ballistic missile program is. Okay, well, Trump is now saying a part of this peace deal is going, have at it with the ballistic missiles.
No, I'm saying that if other countries have them, it's a little bit unfair for them not to have some. A ballistic missile is not the same thing as what we're talking.
Okay, so he's yesterday confirming that. Take you back a few months to Michael Knowles confidently saying, you just don't get it, youngster. You don't understand the complexities. We have to take out their ballistic missile program.
I think that's a total non sequitur.
That's what you just brought up with the nuclear program.
That was one casus belli among many. But no, you wouldn't need the nuclear program to be rebuilt in order to justify the strike. In fact, the State Department came out. Okay. If you'll stop interrupting, I'm happy to explain the point you asked about.
The main reason is nuclear.
One of the casus belli was that they were rebuilding the nuclear program. No one really denies that. No one denies that, including the Iranians. But what they had gotten
absolutely were rebuilding.
They were obviously rebuilding it.
But I would also add they were building so many more missiles that it was becoming a problem for our own ability to defend against them, which is why the preemptive strike was necessary.
That was the imminent threat, not the nuclear program. It was the conventional missiles that were protecting the nuclear program.
That were going to strike us.
Strike our bases in the Middle East and the Israelis, yes.
And we know for certain, based on multiple intelligence reports, maybe you've been briefed on this, that there wasn't evidence of an imminent threat. You're characterizing one.
You're confusing what we're saying.
We had no evidence that they were actually going to attack us.
You're confusing what we're saying. The threat that we're talking about is the threat from the conventional missiles that they were ramping up tremendously to get to a point of...
Is this crazy to watch back? Okay, yeah, maybe there wasn't any evidence of an imminent threat, which is like the standard for starting a war. Either you're attacked or you know for certain you're about to be. And they went, no, it's just because like their missile program was getting advanced enough where theoretically they could attack our bases in the region. Which they ended up doing after we started the war, which Trump then made horrifically insensitive remarks about the loss of life there of American soldiers. But you were saying the missile program itself could be an objective. Well, Trump's saying they get to keep it. Trump's saying, sure, do what you want with that. It's only fair. What say you now, Dan and Michael? And then you have this, a back and forth that I had with one of the Trump-supporting audience members who told me to shut the F up.
Whoever fires me from Daily Wire, I'm going to put an Al-Qaeda hat on and I'm going to become an insurgent. Okay, next question. Do we have another question?
Yeah.
Hey, so my name's Rick. I'm from East Tennessee. This question is for the liberal kid.
Finally, thank you.
I don't know your name. I've seen your videos on TikTok, but my question is,
why are you on TikTok?
You know,
my name is Luke, by the way.
What else are you going to do when you shit, right? So my question is I've seen you call Trump a fascist and a dictator and an authoritarian, those kind of things. But here you are, like, advocating that we don't take out a dictator. I've seen Kamala Harris. She ran on. She, was against Iran.
She didn't say she wanted Iran.
Hillary Clinton was against Iran. Obama was against Iran. All these people that was against Iran since the 70s. I mean, way before your grandparents were even thinking about you. But they, and here you are advocating that we don't do something that's killed thousands of people. Can you explain that and how that doesn't make you kind of the fascist?
Okay, so if we used our military and both my brothers in the military
to kill someone who's killed thousands of people of his own citizens.
Let me answer the question.
Hey, I don't care about your answer. I really don't, because
you don't care about my answer.
But here's
so then what are you asking for?
Here's the problem. He has killed thousands of his own people. He's killed thousands of his own people. And you are advocating that we don't do something about that.
Oh, we should do something. And I think
then why don't you shut the up?
So weird hostility, brother. So do you support like every intervention that we've done?
Do I support every intervention?
Like in the last 20 years?
No, not every intervention.
Okay, so why not?
Why not?
Saddam Hussein was terrible.
There's disagreements that
Why not? Saddam Hussein was terrible.
Well, name one. Which one?
I just said Saddam Hussein.
What?
Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, he needed to be taken out.
Okay, and the war that preceded was good to you?
I would like to see it shorter, but yeah.
Okay, so we're on the same page then. We can think a leader's terrible. I think Putin's terrible, but I think if we try to invade Russia and kill him, that could be very problematic and lead to a lot of American lives lost that we otherwise wouldn't have, which is my main priority, and could cause a further destabilization like we've been referring to before. So my opposition to authoritarianism has nothing to do with when I think using our military is rational and when I don't. You understand that?
Okay, so
maybe you should shut the up.
Yeah.
Whoa.
My second.
They told me not to say.
I had to self-censor because I was about to walk out there like, go crazy, but just don't say any big curse words, like major ones, and no slurs. And I was like, that one, I got that one. We're good. But yeah, I still can't process that clip where he's thinking, if you don't believe we should use our military to go start a war with every country that has an authoritarian regime, then you're authoritarian? Huh? Really? But then he, of course, concedes, yeah, you know what, Iraq war was kind of disaster. Okay. Well, then does that not mean that you were okay with the authoritarian regime? It just seems pretty simple to understand the absurdity of that. But now, in retrospect, I'm curious what that guy and Dan and Michael think about what's happening, because the people who were against it from the beginning, like me, are horrified by the entire saga. The people who were for it, for most of it, are now horrified by how it's concluding and the deal that's going to be a huge gift to Iran. And I wish there was some honesty out there in right-wing media where they would go, you know what? I screamed at this person, not just about me, but just in general, their pro-war, pro-Trump propaganda, and now I'm realizing that was wrong. But it's like there's no incentive in the media for people to say those things. Why not? Just say it. It's fine. I think people will respect it. Casey Malik said, can you send me some pep with this? I'm a big fan. I can't send it in response to a super chat, but I really appreciate you sending the super chat, and I appreciate your interest in pep. All you have to do is go to drinkpep.com, and then you can order it directly to your house yourself. And it's a very simple process. You can even sign up for a subscription, which a lot of the audience members have started doing, where it shows up once a week or once a month, and so that you don't ever have to worry about being out of stock. Thank you, though, for bringing that up. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to show you some resurfaced footage of Trump that, to me, explains everything we've now lived through in sort of a bizarre way that one clip could tell you that much. But I think I need to give you background before I play that clip, which will be a more recent report from Harry Enton about the popularity of Obama compared to other presidents, including Trump. And once you internalize this, the clip from 2011 will really make a lot more sense about Trump's obsession with Obama, Trump's insecurity about his underperformance compared to Obama. And this is, I think, particularly relevant, which is why I'm bringing it up now, because of how much there's a comparison between the Obama nuclear deal and the Trump nuclear deal. So let's watch this and then we'll go back in time.
So, he hasn't been president for some time.
No.
That may have helped.
That might have helped. Look, Barack Obama is a rock star when it comes to the living presidents. I mean, just take a look here. He blows every other living president out of the water in terms of their popularity ratings. Net favorability of living presidents. Look at this. Barack Obama at plus 25 points. The only other living president who's on the plus side of the ledger is George W. Bush, but he's way back there, plus 9 points. The rest of them are all hovering around 0 or negative. Bill Clinton at minus 1 point. Then you got Donald Trump at minus 21.
George Bush being more popular among living presidents than Biden just tells you how wonky our world is. I get that Biden's not going to have a sky-high post-presidency approval rating. That's fine. But it being way worse than George W. Bush's net approval, and I get that number is just juiced up because Democrats go, oh, you know, the good old days back before Trump when Republicans were like Bush. But just remember how bad of a president he was, okay?
Points, and then Joe Biden takes the cake at the bottom. Of course, Barack Obama's running mate at minus 24 points. But the bottom line is this. We are now nearly 10 years from when Barack Obama left the White House, and he is about as popular as he has been at any point since leaving the White House.
I got to say, he is on a different planet than these two guys down here. That's a 50-point difference there. How about among Democrats? How do Democrats look at Barack Obama versus other presidents?
Yeah, so if Barack Obama is a rock star when we're looking at the overall electorate, why don't we focus in on Democrats? And, you know, just the bottom line is this. The presidents Democrats most admire. Barack Obama is the Democrats' current Abraham Lincoln, because look at this. 64% say among all the presidents, the one that they most admire is Barack Obama. And I will say that this mirrors another poll in which you essentially ask, okay, who is the greatest president of all time? And the answer was among Democrats, Barack Obama. But look at this 64%. The next closest are what? 6, 5, and 5?
That's bonkers. But anywho, you get the point. It drives Trump deeply crazy, which is why when he was announcing his own memorandum of understanding with Iran, he started his Truth Social post with, Obama's deal was so bad. He's preoccupied. He's psychologically fixated on comparing himself to Obama. Why? Because he knows where his political ambitions started, and he knows where he's going to compare historically to Obama. And it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good, okay? And I think this goes back to, which is the old clip I want to play for you. As many people have referenced, the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner. Trump was in the crowd, and he was a punchline. He was a joke. And Obama was the star. And many people say this is when Trump decided he was going to run for president in 2016. And the insecurity he has about how he compares to Obama is like no other political insecurity I think I've ever seen before. And many analysts have said it all started with this moment in 2011. Remember, for context, this is back when Trump was running around trying to get right-wing credibility by saying that Obama was not an American and needed to show his birth certificate, etc.
Fellow Americans, mahalo. As some of you heard, the state of Hawaii released my official long-form birth certificate. Hopefully, this puts all doubts to rest. But just in case there are any lingering questions, tonight, I'm prepared to go a step further. Tonight, for the first time, I am releasing my official birth video. I want to make clear to the Fox News table that was a joke. That was not my real birth video. That was a children's cartoon. Yes, I think it is fair to say that when it comes to my presidency, the honeymoon is over. For example, some people now suggest that I'm too professorial, and I'd like to address that head on by assigning all of you some reading that will help you draw your own conclusions. Others say that I'm arrogant, but I found a really great self-help tool for this: my poll numbers. I've even let down my key core constituency, movie stars. Just the other day, Matt Damon. I love Matt Damon. Love the guy. Matt Damon said he was disappointed in my performance. Well, Matt, I just saw the Adjustment Bureau, so right back at you, buddy. Michelle Bachmann is here, though, I understand, and she is thinking about running for president, which is weird because I hear she was born in Canada. Yes, Michelle, this is how it starts. Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience.
It's not even just what Obama was saying, but the crowd just laughing the whole time. They're just like, oh, your experience, and everyone starts laughing. That wasn't even a punchline, but people are just laughing at the idea that Trump has any experience that would make him qualified to be president. He's simmering, and he's building political ambition because he can't stand being mocked by someone that he perceives as cooler. It's like that. I feel weird and immature wording global or at least American politics in such simple terms, but that's the terms that fit in Trump's world. He is that petty that he feels inadequate compared to Obama. And it started all of this to where now he's still screaming to this day, posting in the middle of the night videos about Obama conspiracies. Nonstop throughout the night. Breaking down over Obama. He's having to see poll numbers where Obama is like so much more popular than he is. And he has to be told over and over from even his biggest supporters that Obama's nuclear deal was better than the one Trump's cooking up.
For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
So you go all the way back to 2011 and you say he couldn't stand it. And he's been obsessed ever since. And for that to be a part of his story is so deeply sad. But I don't know how else to interpret him bringing up a president who hasn't been president for a decade. For almost a decade. And talking about how he was terrible and he stole the election from me. And ever since then, he's been working behind the scenes to undermine me. It's like, come on, grow up. Be a man. Stop blaming Obama for everything. and then now he's going to forever live in the shadow. This is so depressing for him. Of Obama's Iran deal, which wasn't even a perfect deal, but was better than what Trump's doing. And Trump's entire Iran policy has been informed by his hatred of Obama. He only ever got out of the Iran deal because it had Obama's name on it. All of this could have been avoided. Death, destruction, global economic shock if Trump hadn't left that deal. That he only left because it had Obama's name on it. Luke, how could you possibly know that? Well, because right now, clearly, all of the things he criticized Obama's deal for, he's doing times 10 in a worse fashion. So clearly he had no principle against, like, making sanctions negotiations or relieving sanctions in return for concessions from Iran. And he's going to forever know, however much he gets yes men to tell him that he's amazing and it's better and it's somehow so much more powerful and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure Netanyahu was able to convince him by going, Obama was weak and wouldn't do it, but you can do it because you're strong compared to Obama. That's probably all it took. And Trump was like, we're going to war. You brought up Obama. But he'll know deep down forever that even on that one issue, he was little pee-pee. And Obama is big pee-pee. Right? Not to mention the broader legacies. Not to mention that clearly Obama has a wife who actually loves him. And Trump will never get to feel that.
So proud of my husband. He's really messed up. I'm giving him some time because this beautiful skirt that my stylist Meredith Coop picked out, that is a portrait, my favorite portrait of my mom. He didn't know it existed until just a few minutes ago. And I've had a few weeks to settle down in the beauty of this skirt, but it's messing him up for good reason. But Marion would have been so proud. She was so proud of her son-in-law. And the man that he is and has been to our family. Always dreaming probably way too big. But always pulling it off. Thank you for doing this for the South Side of Chicago. I love you.
You see how that was a normal human kiss and not
Hooyah, Navy!
as he does with Melania, as Trump does? Real connection to human feelings. He'll never get that. So sad. So sad. That was at the opening of the Obama Presidential Library that I want to go to pretty soon. So, of course, some of you will accuse me of glazing, to which I say, right on. Obama's not president anymore. I don't have to keep doing caveats, which are absolutely true about plenty of mistakes and wrong decisions he made as president. His legacy is one that Trump will never be able to even dream of. And he knows that, and it burns him up inside. That was interesting. I've watched that 2011 clip before, but it's been a long time, and it's weird to see the origin story of all of this hell. See the Hope 2026 said, "Hi Luke, Cole, and Jaden. My partner and I have been watching you for years and just became members. We're about to celebrate our 24th anniversary, and we wanted to say thanks for the laughs." Well, I appreciate that, and congratulations. What an accomplishment. To me, long-term relationships like that, where you start getting to decades and decades of mutual love and dedication and the choice of love. I've been really fascinated examining the beauty of the revelation, this sounds real squishy, that love is a feeling, but becomes a choice. And unconditional love, long-term 24th anniversary, is an active decision you make every day. And that's why I think it's such an accomplishment. Because it's not like you just stumble into the movies show you fall in love and then, oh, will you marry me? And that's always like the end of the movie. But in real life, there's those magical moments, and there's also, I think, something on a deeper level, even more magical, about working every day through the hard things, through the fun things, through whatever, and building something that has withstood so much time and change. That's just, there's nothing more beautiful than that. Should we do this? Let's just do it. What the heck? We're on a roll. Why not? Yeah. Let's see. Cue this up. Carrie Lake returns. It's been quite some time since we talked about Carrie Lake. She is what do you say about Carrie Lake if you don't know who she is? She was like a MAGA influencer turned gubernatorial candidate turned loser in a gubernatorial race turned election denier about her gubernatorial race turned senatorial candidate turned election denier about her Senate candidacy, turned Voice of America head, dismantling it, appointed by Trump. And now Trump is selecting her to be the ambassador to Jamaica. She believed, good job, Carrie. You made it to the top, ambassador to Jamaica. She believed about herself. She's definitely sort of a egomaniac. And she believed about herself when she was running for governor. People thought she was going to win against Katie Hobbs, and that's why she lost it like Trump did whenever she lost her election, because she couldn't process that she lost. And she never accepted that election. And you have to understand something about politicians like her and like Trump and a lot of others, Vance. The second they see a little bit of a window towards power, their mind goes to, I'm going to be president. I'm going to be president. I promise you, when she saw the polls and thought she was going to win the gubernatorial race in Arizona, she was like, I'm going to be governor for a few years and I'm going to be president after that. And she went all the way from that perception to losing a bunch of court cases because she couldn't prove fraud, to then losing another election against Ruben Gallego. And now she's trying to become the ambassador to Jamaica, which, no hate, ambassadorships are big jobs, but definitely not the one that she thought she was going to have. And so here's her in a hearing with Senator Tim Kaine, just getting dismantled about her lack of credibility. Because to be an ambassador, we should probably respect your credentials, your truth value. And she has a horrible track record on those two things. And so he runs circles around her, demonstrating how dishonest she was when she ran against Ruben Gallego and accused Gallego of being controlled by the cartels without evidence.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Lake, in response to a question from Senator McCormick, you said that you were proud of the way you ran your campaigns in 2022 and 2024. I want to ask you a question. On September 27, 2024, you gave a TV interview about your opponent, then House member, now our colleague, Senator Gallego, in which you said he is, quote, controlled by the cartels. His own father was a Colombian drug trafficker, and so he's got links to the cartel. A PolitiFact article on October 3, a few days later, rated that pants on fire. And the title of the article, and I'd like to submit it for the record, Mr. Chair, is In Arizona Senate Race, Carrie Lake Fabricates Link Between Ruben Gallego and Drug Cartels. Now, this is pretty undiplomatic behavior. And just for my colleagues, I hope you might read this story. Ruben, our colleague, has written a memoir about his very troubled upbringing and about the fact that he was abandoned by his father, who then did get into criminal trouble. He was abandoned by his father. He had to be raised by his mother. He was so furious at his father that he changed his last name to be his mother's maiden name, not his father's name. He talks about graduating from boot camp as a Marine, and after years of abandonment, his dad tried to show up and take credit for his own graduation from Marine boot camp. And he writes about how furious that made him and still makes him. He writes about how ashamed he is of his father, how angry he is at his father. Abandonment by a father is one of the most seminal tragedies of life. I mean, go back to the biblical phrase, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? This is not something to fool around with. Ms. Lake accused one of our sitting colleagues of being controlled by the cartels. You had no evidence then, nor do you have any evidence now.
So that's a bombshell way to set up the question. We're about to cut to Carrie Lake trying to respond. Because not only do you say you have no evidence he's controlled by the cartels, but the link that you're trying to exploit to further that point is actually a very, I don't know if relatable is the right word, but resonant story of Gallego's life about a father who abandoned him and then was doing bad stuff. And then Gallego going as far as changing his name to stay. Clearly, this wasn't like, oh, we should be suspicious. They were best friends the whole time his dad was working with the drug cartels or whatever. Actually, you flesh out the story and go, oh my gosh, this is going to make people more sympathetic to Ruben Gallego. And so if you're going to make that claim, it better not just be because of his dad, because that story does not prove your point. It proves the opposite point. So let's see. Does she have more evidence than just his dad that he was not in a relationship with?
Now that our colleague Senator Gallego is controlled by cartels, do you, Ms. Lake?
Well, we provided the receipts. The father was a high-level drug trafficker, trafficking hundreds of thousands.
You said that Ruben Gallego was controlled by the cartels. You provided no evidence. This was rated pants on fire, a lie. You had no evidence then, and you have no evidence now that Ruben Gallego is controlled by cartels. Isn't that right?
I thank you for the question, Senator Kaine. I do appreciate it. I don't know, and I'm not here to do reputational control or reputational
How about an apology to our colleague? If you made that...
She says, I don't know. So you have any evidence other than what we already know about his dad? I don't know. Oh, so you made a outrageously defamatory claim then. Is that what you're saying? Not even that there was a link, because I guess you could fairly say, yeah, I guess a familial link is a link. You're trying to denote something differently, especially given his life story, but okay. What's the link? Controlled. Ooh, that's a high standard of evidence for controlled. And she says, I don't know. With her lack of credibility on that, and then most consequentially, election lies, you should not ever be in public office again in any capacity whatsoever. Obviously, you're going to get it because you're being selected by the Trump administration. He's not going to care about that. But in any reasonable world, someone with that track record of her lies would not be anywhere close to power, even if it's just the ambassador to Jamaica.
Claim he was controlled by cartels, and now you're saying you don't know what the facts are, then you're acknowledging that your charge was wrong. How about apologizing to our colleague?
I don't believe my charge was wrong. Ruben Gallego's father is a high-level
That's not the question I asked you.
He was a felon.
That's not the question. You asserted he was controlled by cartels. You had no evidence then. You have no evidence now. You're unwilling to admit it. And here's something that's even worse, Mr. Chair. That was during the heat of a campaign. Sometimes we say things during campaigns that we go too far. She's continued to repeat this as a sitting member of the Trump administration. A couple months ago, Ruben Gallego put out a tweet against the invasion of Venezuela. He didn't mention Ms. Lake. He just said he was against it. And she, at 2:35 in the morning, the following day, responded, "You are a member of a Mexican cartel family. You are also a fraud. No one is surprised by your take." She's continuing to repeat a lie. She just told the committee she has no idea whether it's true or false, but she was glad to say it, and she won't retract it now. That should be disqualifying. Mr. Segar.
Wow. Those are the moments you wait for in hearings like this, and they rarely come around, and that's brutal. But here's the part that's more brutal. She could be exposed like that 100 times over in these hearings, and she's going to get the job. She's going to get the job. Republicans will vote for her. They'll have enough votes that she'll end up getting the job. Maybe some Democrats will even vote for her. A lot of Democratic senators are still weird about that. Like, well, I'm showing bipartisanship by Fetterman. Fetterman will be like, well, maybe we should look into Gallego's dad. But that's the sad state of affairs, right? You have an administration that's bar for qualifications or trustworthiness is so low that Satan himself would pass it. Meaning it's below hell is my point. Okay. And that is a very bad thing for our country, because ideally all these positions would be like, wow, these are the best people America has to offer. Of course, our federal government staff the political appointees are the best that we have to offer in the country. Mm-mm. And what is funny too, Kayla and I were joking about this recently. The Trump era has kind of made it to where no one thinks that they couldn't run for office. You know what I mean? It used to be you go, I don't feel like I have enough qualifications. Now I think everyone who has any interest is like, yeah, I'm qualified enough. Why? Because I'm a person. Because clearly they just pick random people to be in these positions. Alrighty, final wrap up. Intuition Jen said, thanks for doing it, the last segment, of course. And then we have Christopher McCain saying, Luke, never ask if we should do this. On TLBS, the answer will always be yes. Don't doubt yourself. Always do it. Love y'all. We're here for it. Appreciate it. Just Sarah Martin said, saying as an avid viewer with love, thank you, News Twink. But seriously, Jaden Cole, Luke and Kayla, we appreciate you. You all are so sweet. Is there a more loving and positive online community in the world? I don't think so. And on that beautiful note, we will wrap. Much love to you all. Talk to you next time.